He said
He literally counted.
Yeah, Terry Davis, we specifically had him there just in case. So.
You never know. Thank you, sir. Think there's something wrong with this chair by any chance?
We didn't do it.
I just wish it was a little longer.
What?
That meeting.
My wife's not over
Are you serious? You're killing me. Killing me.
My wife went ahead and ate without me.
I can only imagine. Are you doing it?
My chair's broke. I sit down with the ground zero.
Oh dear.
She's not gonna be here, so.
Oh, Amber's not coming?
Nope.
Is it time for new chairs?
There's always been the one that was a problem. I was always very good at giving it to
They
Janice.
used to have, when they had the old brown chairs, one was so low, whoever got here last, they moved that chair around so that person had to sit in that chair. You couldn't even see their face, it was so low.
They used to play musical chairs. Might be that chair.
You
Yeah.
didn't want to be late to that meeting.
It would always end up playing music dancing.
I can only imagine. That's awful.
I never got it.
Joey's got
I
here
knew
for
John
her.
Thayer got it. He's reeling over here, take it.
I'll have to check with Tom on
That's
that.
awful.
It's just, it's also a matter, we're all out.
Allergies are off the charts tonight.
Sift through,
Question?
sifting through
Go to, no, that's not it. Hold on.
mowing and all that stuff, so. It's frustrating.
There wasn't a
This
issue
one?
that Janice was talking about?
Liaison.
No.
Having a company repaint
This one?
the restroom building. Yeah.
Yeah, what did those used to be?
Fried the camera, so we couldn't find the person.
Can't remember what it
So they got that fixed
We,
over there.
It's
we
getting-
raised it.
It's getting first reading
Okay.
tonight.
Because we just
Committee
raised
meeting for
it.
them. It's the one
Rick,
I was going
two alleys on High Street down by
to
St.
go to
Vincent's.
Delaware. I
Okay.
ended up going to Delaware.
We're
Okay.
redoing the alleys and curbs.
Been posting this job and I can't get his.
Is that the city?
I guess.
Probably is, yeah. It's, I'd have to check with Brian on what our
Wait,
paving
what?
schedule
We
is.
raised it.
They're up there.
and
It's a
posted
fire.
it.
They dug it up, put in,
I think they
put in
did.
about 20 feet of concrete in the end of the We're going to begin the Employee and Community Relations with Mr. Francis, discuss part-time seasonal wages. Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, we let the chief speak at our last meeting, explaining the need for this position. So we've all had 2 weeks to get a hold of the chief or come up with our questions. So chief, if
Well,
you'd like
this one's on wages. Are you talking about?
oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
this is wages, first one.
I was looking at the wrong one over here.
Okay. You're okay.
All right, Mr. Zick, we looks like you cleaned this up. we know what our seasonal positions are and what our part-time positions are. So we'll be going to third reading, so we'll be voting on it tonight. So if anybody has any, because I know Rick had spoke, but I think we could see that there needed to be some cleanup on the legislation of what's part-time, what's seasonal. So is there anything we need to know what you've changed here?
So there hasn't been any changes yet. Mr. Hillier asked about water, wastewater, and engineering seasonals, and I did get some information on that. I talked to Mr. Reinhardt. They would like to have some seasonal wages. In the past, they've used seasonals for things like painting hydrants and things like that around the city. I think we agreed, though, that the water, wastewater department 2 isn't really necessary. It's just a 50-cent change from their normal seasonals, and there's already a step 1, step 2, and leader progression in that. So I would be supportive of council amending the legislation to remove water, wastewater department 2 wages. When it comes to engineering, I didn't realize this before because we haven't used them in my time here, but shortly before I came here, engineering had used about 5 seasonal workers to do tree analysis to deal with our tree plants. So I think engineering would like to have that capability so that they can do another review of the city's tree inventory and things like that. But open to questions from council.
Questions, council?
So, you're saying we could delete water, wastewater department 2, correct?
Yeah. We can remove that. So
And we're leaving water, wastewater department because we use them for paint and fire hydrants, but I thought that came out of the fire department.
No.
So, the seasonal workers for the fire department do what?
They do the testing, so they do flow testing, and they also test fire hose. Painting has typically been a utility operation.
I only question, I know our income tax dollars are good. I saw the paperwork that was sent as far as our incoming. I just hope this doesn't get out of hand. I mean, if there's a real reason to keep these, I understand that. But if there's, in conversation, you say, oh, well, we can actually do this because we have money in that. I don't want that to happen. I mean, if there's a real need, that we need something, and need to get it done, let's do it. But other than that, that's why I questioned it the last time. If we haven't used it for that long, it still kind of concerns me.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we used the water wastewater was meter installation. Frankly, working with Mr. Griffith when he was the assistant director, it never seemed to get off the ground, this painting fire hydrant thing. I think with Aaron and his team, we'll actually see some progress with that. And we do try and look for alternatives to seasonals first. So I know we've had a discussion with the probation department about that being a community service project we could possibly try and use them for. But if we can't get it done, I know it's been many years since we've painted most of these fire hydrants. So
Where are we on all the water meters? Is that done?
it's not 100% done yet. I think everything but inside meters are done, and part of the reason was we didn't want to send seasonal workers or students into people's homes to install meters. Another big backup to that is there aren't a lot of meters to be had. So, getting the inventory that we need is challenging.
Terry, you okay with all this?
Yeah, I haven't got down to this fire inspector, but that top section. I was like you, Mr. Hillier, in regards to the number 2. I haven't seen that on for some time. That's the removal of that would make sense.
And the fire inspector at $17. That's the other one I questioned the last time was we were going to train all the fire people to be inspectors.
I mean, I think you've heard there's been an increase in run volume. They do go through the homes, but Terry Davis, our primary fire inspector, is not doing, I mean, he's probably getting to all the businesses in the city every 3 years, and the target's really every year. So part of what I think Chief wanted to do is also utilize some of the funding from the Gambier fire contract to have somebody deal with those facilities out there. I think there was always a vision at some point of maybe expanding the fire inspection office, but I think using part-time is a much more, a cheaper option, quite frankly.
And that brings up, go ahead, Terry. No, it brings up another point. We were gonna have those firemen be the inspectors down there so they could familiarize themselves with the buildings. But now
Sure.
that's changed.
And they still do familiarize themselves with the buildings, but there's a lot of paperwork and repeat visits to make sure compliance that can't always get done on a regular basis.
So-
Thank you.
So my question on the fire inspector, would these be any of our existing already on staff people doing it off staff?
I don't think so. I think he's looking to utilize a part-time employee who has a strong fire inspection background. So he'd be looking to bring in another part-timer. Currently, we only have, I believe, 12 to 15 part-timers on staff. I know council authorizes us up to 20 or 25. So it would be kind of utilizing that same part-time arrangement, I guess would be.
Let me try my question again.
Yeah.
So will the same people who work on staff now
Mm-hmm.
be utilized in a time schedule where they're not on our staff?
So current full-time employees have the necessary certification. I don't believe any of our part-time employees do. So we will still do our best to utilize our full-time responders to do some of the inspections, but it hasn't proved to capture as much of our businesses as quickly as we would like it to.
I think that's going to create a situation that you don't want to get into,
Mm-hmm.
and that is that everybody that's on this list right here should be follow OPERS.
Mm-hmm.
Our staff people who are currently on staff are police and fire people.
So we want to separate out the part-time firefighter from.
What I'm saying is that you're telling me you're using current staff or would be using current staff to do this particular task. But while they're in that, they still would not be in police and fire pension then.
Okay.
If you're just an outside worker, let's say you just contracted with somebody. Contracted with Matt, he's going to be the inspector part-time. He would not fall under police and fire.
Okay.
So if you're using current staff, I'm not trying to be difficult.
No.
I'm just trying to help create or get rid of a situation that's going to create itself. If you were using current staff people, it's a whole complete different pension system at which those people would be working in.
Are our part-timers out of police and fire?
No,
So
they're Social Security.
there's current full-time staff doing the same job our part-time firefighter EMTs do. So how is that a similar conflict with?
Police and fire does not permit a part-timer to join police and fire pension. Therefore,
So
they
when I
have
look at the fire inspector, even though there's a full-timer in police and fire doing fire inspection, I don't see it as any different than a full-timer being in police and fire and a part-time firefighter being in PERS. I guess I don't understand how the fire inspector is treated differently than the other part-timers.
because they may be doing fire work, but there also are full-time staff people at the same time. You've got a mixed match there, I think. This is an item for us to work out later if you folks want to continue on. I don't need to deliberate this issue at hand, but that's why I was looking to determine what personnel would actually be filling this particular
It
position.
wouldn't be our current staff. It would be either new part-timers or it'd only be part-time staff. We wouldn't be utilizing
This is
full-timers in
second
a part-time fire inspector role.
Okay, we'll work with this and see what we can do with it.
Ms. Woods, you had a
So
question.
3 things, and Terry, I just want to confirm. So some of these are like 33% increases, and I'm assuming when people set budgets, they were setting them around the current salary. So you still feel like budgets, I know it's probably not going to be a ton of hours, but budgets will handle these increases.
I don't know, you'd have to ask the director on that
Okay.
one.
So
really
Tom and I
don't.
did an analysis, and if we want to punt this to another meeting, that'd be fine. I can send it to everybody, but he basically set aside, I believe, $45,000 in each of his budgets, and it can capture it. The only budget where it might create a little more spending would be in the street budget, but that also has some unappropriated funds that could be
Yeah, they can be utilized.
utilized toward that.
Okay, second question. So it talks in section 2 about them getting time and a half if they're working these holidays.
Only
Or-
fire staff.
Only that fire.
Thank
Sure.
you.
They're talking about part-time firefighter person.
Okay, thank you. And now the third question has just eluded me. But,
My time's up. We will give this a second reading. Mr. Hilliard?
That's my question. Give it a second reading.
Yes.
Maybe you guys can get together and iron this out.
Yeah, somebody get a hold of me, when you guys have a schedule, let's both get together, and then I'll come visit with you. You bring donuts if you want, but I doubt it. We'll give this a second reading tonight. Mr. Hill, I'd like another 10-minute committee meeting. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. President.
We're adjourning that section of Employee and Community Relations, Mr. Francis. We're now gonna move back to him for Employee and Community Relations to discuss the Police Department Community Liaison.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had the chief in at our last meeting, and he'd given us some insight of the position he's requesting for the liaison for community advocacy. And if you've got a hold of him or haven't got a hold of him, today is the day to ask your questions, because this is going for a third reading this time. So if you have questions, ask him now. I believe you have your community
I brought
advocacy.
Mr. Dan Jackman, our community advocate director, with us that might be able to answer some questions that I can't, or just if you want to pick his brain on anything about this, feel free.
How long has this position been in place?
November will be 2 years.
2 years?
Yes, sir.
Questions, council?
so Chief, I know you said you're hopeful to get the grant again next year to continue to cover this. Is the timing, since we just got the grant now, is the timing of that grant gonna affect this for next year?
Shouldn't.
Okay,
It shouldn't. The grant cycle for this one is June, July.
okay,
For the next year, it was June, July last year. There was some holdups, and we didn't get everything from the state
okay.
from till spring of this year. There was a lot of, they changed a bunch of things on us on the grant, and we had to give them a bunch of information after the fact, after, hey, you're gonna get this grant, but we need all this information. So we had to backtrack a little bit, and Dan and Lieutenant Burns did a lot of work on fulfilling that. And we just got our actual approval letter 3 weeks ago. About 3
And this
weeks
will
ago.
run us through December?
This will run us through the end of the year.
Yes, since Mr. Jackman's here, I'd like to, if you could come up, so that'd be excellent. Am I allowed to touch? Mr. Soundman, can you hear me? Is this mic is aiming straight up? Am I
Hold it to
okay?
you.
You pull it down.
Okay. I know we weren't supposed to touch them, I thought. Hi. We know that we talked, and the chief's done a good job of explaining these positions to us. But since you're here, and I appreciate your presence, I think it'd be good to hear from you. We know that discretionary patrol hours are very important, and we know that positions like this are supposed to help patrol officers get back on patrol and use their time being police officers instead of social workers. Both of those are two important roles, but they're separate and distinct roles. In your own words, could you describe that for us, how you feel that's working? We know that the chief did a good job of explaining it, but you do it every day. So if you could help us talk about that.
Actually, it's working really well. Our numbers are great. We've helped a lot of people, and it's not just limited to domestic violence. It's homelessness, drug and alcohol. Domestic violence, of course, is a good portion of it. And I'm noticing from last year to this year, our domestic violences are up. I don't know why. It kind of comes in cycles. I don't have an explanation for that, but being able to do this job, I'm able to respond to help the officers, and it gets them on the street. One of the things we do, Lieutenant Young and I work really well with it. He'll go and assess the situation, try to utilize his CIT skills, and then he'll call and ask me, hey, would you come out here and talk with this person? And then it frees him up to go on and handle other calls or assist the officers on duty. I'm able to meet with the person, talk with them, see what their needs are, try to get them the help and get them the referrals that they need. So far it's worked great. We haven't had any hiccups, so to speak. The homelessness obviously is an issue that everybody's trying to work on and come up with solutions to. You know, right now we just don't have a homeless, you know, shelter that's through the summertime, so it's really difficult. But we have other places that we try to utilize surrounding area, just a little bit of everything. But so far so good. The drug and alcohol, love doing that as well. We, you know, of course we respond to a lot of ODs. Those fluctuate, they kind of come and go. There's you know, a lot of things that hit the street. You know, there's always something new coming out that, you know, we're trying to combat. You know, there's a new drug out called Trank that we just heard about maybe last month. Not here yet, knock on wood. But you know, we have to try to prepare for that. And so far so good. Like I said, we're helping a lot of people and getting a lot of people to the referrals and getting them to where they need to go. And it's kind of up to them to follow through. But I still try to stay in contact and track, and at least be supportive, and not just be like, hey, here's a person, see ya. I try to stay in contact, and a lot of times, you know, it means a lot of phone calls and texts, especially on the weekend. That's when they like to talk, and that's okay. So, but so far so good. It's going great.
How many times do you feel like that? What are your normal hours? I know we had the time sheet last
we
year.
flex a lot,
Right.
So, a couple days a week, I'll work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. A couple days I'll work maybe 10 or 11 till 8 or 9 at night.
Okay.
Kind of, and then if they call me in, I'll come in.
So you're on call in the evenings,
absolutely.
and that happens a lot.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who maybe are looking for some support or reassurance. Doesn't mean I have to run in. I mean, I have, but you know, sometimes they're in a situation where they, you know, are just looking for that support. Where, you know, hey, I don't want to make a bad decision. What should I do here? And it's just a matter of, you know, just talking, being supportive and positive.
Preemptive policing,
Absolutely.
in many ways.
And it helps immensely.
Yeah. And this new officer, new liaison's going to be second shift to provide more
Yes,
coverage. Is that
it's
correct?
going to be an evening hours type schedule, and we can adjust that accordingly. Again, it is an hourly position. We set it up as an hourly position, and it is primarily focused about, according to the grant rules, this person's got to spend about 75% of their time working domestic violence and domestic violence related issues, which is a good portion of what we do. Most of our domestics do happen in the evening time.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
As of right now, we have, last week I was at 52, and as of today, I think we're about 66 domestic violences from January 1st to today. You know, it just seems to kind of grow, unfortunately. Not sure why. And then, unfortunately, we do have some of the calls that we get are called disturbances. You know, when we hear the word disturbance, we think of a loud party, some loud music, or somebody's muffler's too loud. But a lot of times, those domestic violences are kind of mislabeled, so we end up really having more than what I'm showing. But you know, that's something we're working on as well, trying to get that adjusted to where it's labeled correctly.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Dan to the Winter Sanctuary Board. We voted on him in our last meeting, and that kind of fits in with this.
Excellent.
Working with the homeless and being on the Winter Sanctuary Board. Appreciate his willingness. Had a great interview with Dan, and I appreciate him being willing to serve on that board.
Thank you. My honor.
Mr. Hillier.
Three questions if I could. I had your schedule and your timesheet for the last meeting, and we talked to the chief about the hours he was expecting this new person to work and the hours that you were working, and you just mentioned working evening hours. But based on that schedule and timesheet I had, I said something about there looks like there'd be a lot of overlapping of hours, yours and his. How do you see that working? Is it necessary to have an overlap rather than to work that person? If you're done at 6, they start at 6. I understand there's a training period and all that, but
Right.
besides that.
That's what basically what we're looking at in the beginning, is just doing a training period, get that person used to what's going on, get them acclimated with Ellie Klein, our victim advocate. She does everything domestic violence and then some, and in the court system, and then adjusting that schedule.
We've adjusted Dan's schedule 3 times since he started to for the most beneficial time of when he's here and when he does things.
Is this person planning on from after training to be working that what we'd call second or third shift?
Yes, that's the goal right now. Yes.
And then how much? I'll put it because you say you have a lot of personal contact. How much feet on the street with these people do you have, and how much feet on the street do you expect this person to have?
It varies. It kind of goes like in cycles for some reason. That unfortunately, I wish I could track it. I'd make a lot of money on it. But it's it just
Would you
kind of
say
goes.
it's half of what you do, a quarter of what you do?
Probably close to half, if not half. It kind of varies. Sometimes you're out all day. It feels like you're just out all day long, and then the next day maybe 1 or 2 calls. It just varies. It's back and forth, really.
Would you expect this person to be able to be out on the street more than doing the hours he's working?
Yes.
They're working?
Dan is the director of the program and the first person in this program. He spent an enormous amount of time doing meetings and connections with these different groups, the homeless shelter, Riverside Recovery, our hospitals, our mental health evaluation centers, all these different people. In fact, I had to tell him a while back, I said, you gotta back off some of these meetings and do that. You can't say he wasn't saying no to them. That all these people want him to come and talk to them and have this interaction. We've gotten a lot of good connections that way. But he spent a lot of time making these connections. This second person won't need to do that. There will be far fewer collaborative meetings that this person's going to have to go to, and will spend more time.
This person's basically dedicated to ride with the officers to assist. And that's what the purpose was, to be there, be on duty, be able to respond in real time, and help the officers, help free them up. Especially with domestic violence situations, there's a lot of paperwork involved in it. I don't know how long, what the average is it takes an officer off the road, but I'm sure we can cut that down and go over a victim's packet, things like that this person could be doing instead of the officer.
And I guess the last question is a budget question. With the personnel you've added to, or plan on adding to the police department this year, and then now you got this with a grant.
Yes, sir.
So you're looking at, not too awful many months from now, you're gonna be looking at the next year's budget.
Correct.
If you don't get the grant and budget's a little tighter, do you feel you could let this person go?
I don't want to. I fully expect this person to be a viable member of our team going forward, but if that becomes necessary, then it could happen. A lot of these people that are funded by grants are on and this is something we'll tell this person going in. A lot of people that are on grants we have several people that work on grants within the city, and if those grants all of a sudden dry up, then we've either got to make a decision that it's a cost that we should and could incur to continue the program forward, or we stop the program. It's not something I'd like to think about, but it obviously is something that needs to be considered.
My time's up,
That's
Yeah.
very realistic.
eating into Mr. Hillier's time, so
Yes, you did.
this will be going to a third reading, so we'll still have time to discuss anything.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Gentlemen.
Adjourning the
Thank you.
employing
Thank you
community
for
relations, we now move to Mr. Hillier, we're planning and zoning, discuss the Norton rezoning request. Mr. Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, as he did say, this is the now you got me doing it, North Norton Street rezoning. This is a reference to ordinance 2023-17, rezoning from R1 to Planned Commercial Development District, correct?
Correct.
All right. Municipal planning unanimously approved this for rezoning. Mr. Filkins will fill us in here on his side of it, but I would like to say this is, in my opinion, unlike what we just experienced with rezoning on Vernon View, this would be an improvement to the neighborhood. This is getting rid of some properties that are in bad shape and improving them to where we need to go. And I'll just finish with this. I plan on giving this a second reading tonight. At the May 22nd meeting, I'll ask to postpone this ordinance to June 12th. Did that right, didn't I, Todd? Saw you looked at me. In order, we have to have a public hearing, and that would be on the June 12th. That's why we do the postponement at the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for helping with that. It's all yours, boss.
Well, with a warm introduction like that, I mean, I don't know that you need me. But thanks for having me. I appreciate your consideration of this ordinance, and we will have the public hearing. But I do want to walk through. This is one piece of a larger. To get this to the final process, I'll be in front of you a few times. So these are two properties, 301 Norton Street and 303 North Norton Street, just north of Heartland Commerce Park. 301 was torn down a number of years ago and is a vacant lot, and 303 is a vacant house that the land bank purchased and we're tearing down. So we will clear that lot, and this project is exactly what the mission of the land bank is supposed to do. We took these two lots right next to Heartland Commerce Park in an area that people probably wouldn't make an investment, and we have a partnership with the Area Agency on Aging to build 2 buildings there, which will be 8 units of senior affordable housing. So it'll be, they will have fully outfitted apartments, and the Area Agency on Aging will come once a week, check in with the seniors, make sure they have everything they need, do wraparound services like Meals to on Wheels and things like that. So these seniors can stay in their neighborhood, ideally. And the rents will be very affordable. Area Agency is doing a great job trying to fundraise to fund the project. The one that they're doing in Mansfield, I think the rents are between $500 and $600 a month for a fully, and that's all utilities included and everything. So that's that's really nice. They will also be fully maintained by Area Agency on Aging. So the grass will be mowed constantly. There will be people there making sure that the gutters are in good shape and those kind of things. I don't want necessarily to get up and clean gutters. I definitely don't want my dad to go up and clean gutters, so it's good that we don't have the seniors up there doing that. And it'll be a nice bridge property from the manufacturing that we have at Heartland Commerce Park, which is going to be booming with jobs we all hope and expect, to the residential area of North Norton Street. So it's going to be great. I can take questions. I can also go through the 4 considerations you have, whichever you prefer.
So what, the age for this is what? Is there an age range?
Yeah, so I believe it'll be 65 and older, but that's up to Area Agency on Aging.
And this is subsidized housing?
Yes.
Maintained by whom again?
Maintained by Area Agency on Aging.
Is that probably not on site, but they will see all the maintenance and everything?
Yep, so they will be on site once a week, but they will hire out the maintenance piece.
That's the place up at Hawkins, where Hawkins Market was in Mansfield.
Correct.
That's the Area Agency on Aging.
Yes.
Are there plans to further that in that neighborhood, or is it?
So this is a pilot. It's only 2 buildings of 8 units total. We do want to see how it goes, and ideally we could expand. They wanted to start smaller and then maybe add more, but whether or not it would be in this neighborhood or other neighborhoods in the city, we would have to look and see what's available. They wanted to have the seniors be close to ideally where they already live, but also close to, there's the Shelmar Park is right up the road, so they can go to the park. They can, CAT can easily get them, Knox Area Transit's going to be just on the other side of Heartland Commerce Park, so it can easily come and get them for appointments and such. So it's a pretty ideal location.
Knox Public Health's 3 blocks?
Exactly. So everything's they wanted to be somewhat walkable while folks feel like walking, but also easily to get transit. What else can I tell you?
Questions, John?
I was going to say, there's just about 5 more years I could rent that place.
Hey, I'll hold a space for you.
It's right down the street.
Yeah. That's the idea. Well, so that's exactly the idea, is that we want you to be folks to be able to move in and not have to say bye to their neighbors.
Well, I can say one thing, watching this it would get its readings. And that's an area town. I've been there almost 40 years, and nothing happens there. Mm-hmm. In the last 10 years, nothing good has happened there. It's starting to get better. I mean, really starting to get better. So it's nice to see this kind of growth go on in an area that's just been kind of sitting stagnant. And you can see the excitement in the people when the sun comes up and the temperature goes up. Yeah. The pedestrian traffic is unbelievable. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to progress.
And we will be, like I said, back in front of you. This is just to get the zoning changed. It is the same zoning as Heartland Commerce Park, so it's not a spot zoning kind of a situation. It's touching this zoning, and So we'll do that. Then we have to get a conditional use.
That doesn't come back full council.
That doesn't. But then the final plan from municipal planning
yeah.
will be back from council, which will get taken care of.
Conditional use would be what?
BZA.
I understand.
Yeah, it goes to BZA for multifamily.
Okay.
So that is an allowable use in PCDD.
Yep.
For conditional.
Mm-hmm.
Mel?
Any other?
I'm good. So this is not assisted living. These are self-sufficient.
Nope, they're independent living.
Yeah.
Age in place, so the doors and everything will be wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs and things like that if they need it down the road. But yeah, ideally independent living.
Yeah. I think this is wonderful, actually. So.
This is off topic, but I drive down Sandusky in that area, and where the Apostolic Church is, there's all those tables out there. It looks like there's a permanent garage sale there. It looks like trash. Now, is that,
I think they had a rummage sale. I think it's actually been an advertised rummage sale. Just
but
in
even
the last
today, it's
week.
still out, all these tables are still out there. You know, that stuff needs to be cleaned
On
up.
Sandusky Street?
Yeah.
Right on Sandusky
Yeah,
Street.
for 2 weeks.
I believe a letter has been sent.
Good, because by ordinance, they're only allowed to have 3 such sales a year, and then they
Yeah.
gotta talk to our tax department to become retail, correct?
That's outside my jurisdiction.
Yes.
There's an ordinance about that.
It looks terrible.
If we address it.
Yes. It does.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. I know we're short here, but I wanted to get in front of you before we go to the public hearing and give an opportunity for more public to learn about it, so they know. Obviously the neighbors and everybody will be informed. We've talked to what neighbors we've been able to, and they're interested and excited, including both the people renting and their owners.
Thank you.
So
Next
did we?
question.
Sorry, did we have to send formal letters to them as well about this?
Yes.
It's been done.
You
Good.
probably wouldn't have too many on this, would you? It seems
Not too many.
I sent out 28 letters on Friday.
Did you?
Hmm.
I'm sure I'll get a couple of them.
You get one.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Good.
Anything else? Guess we'll see you in 2 meetings.
Whenever you need me.
It'll be the public hearing.
Okay. I'll be
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. We're adjourning the Planning and Zoning Committee. We're now going to be in recess until 7:30 p.m. We begin the legislative portion of the meeting. 7:30 p.m. Going to call the May 8th, 2023 City Council Legislative Session to order. Mr. Hill, please call the roll.
Mr. Francis,
Here.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Hillier,
Here.
Mrs. Seaval,
Here.
Mr. Severns,
Here.
Mr. Mahan,
Here?
Mrs. Woods.
Here.
Someone want to move to excuse?
I'll move to excuse Miss Keener this evening.
I'll second it.
Been moved and second. Mrs. Keener be excused. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. She is excused. The invocation this evening will be given by Mark Bradley from Covenant Christian Church. Please rise to the invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
Father God, we invite your presence into this place tonight. We thank you for your infinite wisdom and love, which you have displayed in the beauty of your creation and the unfolding story of redemption. You are the author of all knowledge and truth, and your wisdom surpasses all understanding. We ask that you bless those council members present this evening with wisdom, honor, integrity, truth, grace, and love throughout these proceedings. We thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed upon the citizens of Mount Vernon and its surrounding communities. During this meeting tonight, please guide us and help us make decisions that honor you and bring glory to your name. Through your wisdom, may we be a light in this community, reflecting your love and grace to those we represent and serve. We ask all these things in the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Council, in your packets were the minutes of the April 24th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Then moved and seconded, they be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. They are approved. Mr. Hill, any petitions or communications?
There are none.
Council members, any committee reports? I see no liquor control licenses or proclamations. We did have a person asking to speak on matters of city concern, James Viola, but I don't see him here. So we'll move on. Move on to the legislative portion of the meeting. Council, the agenda is in your packet. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'll assume it's approved by consensus. We have no resolutions for third reading or second reading. We do have three for first reading, and the first one is resolution number 2023-47. Mr. Hill.
Resolution number 2023-47, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to make supplemental appropriations.
Mrs. Seabolt.
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2023-47 to its third and final reading.
Second the motion.
Been moved and seconded to suspend the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill.
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Seabolt.
I move to adopt resolution number 2023-47.
Second?
And moved and seconded to adopt this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Scott, why don't we talk about some money?
Thank you, Mrs. Seavolt and Council. This is always a good piece of legislation. This is where we've got supplemental resources coming into the city that we did not anticipate at the beginning of the year. For item 1, for the $360,800 and nearly $17, spoke with you folks a couple of meetings ago in regards to an incentive program that we had with our insurance company over the last planned year. And we actually come out on ahead very well in regards to that. So we would like to put these dollars into our insurance line account and get things moving along in that. $360,817, that's a pretty good job. Number 2, once again, United Way of Knox County has given a grant to PAC United, in the amounts of $1,000. Again, we like to appreciate these people who are very supportive of this particular program. And item 3, it will be from United Way as well, and this is a grant. It's going to be passed through into the police department. I realize our line account right now says chemical analysis. We're going to rename that particular line account, but United Way wanted to provide some hotel vouchers for people who need a night's stay for one reason or another, to get from whatever the event may be on the street. It could be an event that may have happened throughout the night, whatever the case may be. They wanted to help support the police department as well as the individuals who are in a desperate need for a night's stay, if you will. And we were appreciating for that to help. The chief will perhaps maybe talk with you more or give you more information on that at another time, but it would certainly great support from United Way on behalf. And now then we'll move on to item 4 for $50,000. If you recall, as we begin doing all of our calculations for funding the water park this year with our new contractor, we were about 50,000 short in resources to get where we needed to be. We did reach out to Ariel Foundation on behalf of Mayor Starr, and they were willing to provide us a grant for 50,000 to get us to the fully funded amount for this contract. Item 5, again, we're back into Ariel Foundation, and for the $170,000, they are back into tree plantings, tree trimmings, sidewalk improvements, and tree partners. All of those are programs that they have continued to help support in regards to all of our arbor works and those things related to sidewalk improvements as well. 6 and 7 kind of come together, if you will, 2 different departments, but certainly the same amount of monies. These people, their department had garnered up a whole bunch of scrap iron and metals, took them up to Ross and got rid of them, and now they'd like to put those resources back into their line accounts, some for uniforms and some for some equipment that they need. And this is in the utility operations of water and wastewater collection and distribution. 8 and 9 come together as a grant for $577,000. This isn't anything new for you folks, council, because Emily was here probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks, talking about Stump Street and Northview Drive. And CDBG has been awarded this grant to help the improvements for Stump Street and Northview Drive, along as with other resources that Emily had talked to you about in a previous meeting. So we're really looking for extra dollars flowing in all the time. Thank you, Mrs. Seavolt.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Any other questions? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Hillier,
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Now we move to resolution number 2023-48. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2023-48, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to pay bills from 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Mrs. Seabolt?
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2023-48 to its 3rd and final reading.
Second the motion.
Then moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Ms. Keener, Mr. Hillier.
Yes.
Mrs. Seavolt,
Yes.
Mr. Severns.
Yes.
Mr. Mahan.
Yes.
Mrs. Woods.
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Seabolt?
I would like adoption of resolution number 2023-48.
Second.
Then moved and seconded for the adoption of this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seabolt?
We have bills from 2022.
Oh, yeah. It does happen.
Okay.
So we do have 3 items. Thank you, Mrs. Seavold and Council. items 1, 2, and 3. So on items 1, Alloway Labs, that's coming out of the out of the water treatment plant. And then, of course, what we're talking about here, these are bills that we're utilizing 2023 appropriations to cover 2022 expenditures. And then Allstate Fire Protection, that has to do with maintenance for our fire extinguishers and related safety equipments within our buildings. And then Spear Mechanical, they're the people who do our HVAC systems in the amount of $2305.84 for, and this looks like it's at the water treatment plant. So all these are pending for payment at this time, ma'am.
Looks like we gotta do it then.
So are those 2022 POs still open?
Yeah.
They just keep them open until you decide to close them because they're never going
Get
to.
them cleaned up, yeah.
Is there a reasoning from these companies why they're billing us 5 months into the next year?
Actually, it's not that the company's doing it, it's the department didn't do their job.
Explain that.
So what happened is that the bill was let's say it's a December 2022 bill, and when it came in, the department did not have a purchase order in place, somewhat like a then and now, but we have to use a different lingo to it. And they're using 2023's appropriations to pay a bill that was incurred in the previous calendar year.
So is there any kind of a correction or anything we could do with that to see that doesn't happen again?
Well, we've tried to this is pretty good, only to have 3 and we're clear up into May. That's not too bad in that regards. But we prefer the departments do what they need to do.
We're probably lucky we're not being charged interest.
Oh, no. No, we don't. We don't pay interest.
So I say we're lucky.
Yes, very much so.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Now moves to resolution number 2023-49. Mr. Hill?
Resolution number 2023-49, a resolution authorizing and directing the auditor of the City of Mount Vernon to pay bills pursuant to Section 5705.41D, then and now certification.
Mrs. Seaval?
Thank you. I would like to suspend the rules requiring 3 separate readings and take resolution number 2023-49 to its 3rd and final reading.
Second?
Been moved and seconded for the suspension of the rules. Any discussion on the suspension? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
The rule is suspended. Mrs. Seaval?
I would like adoption of resolution number 2023-49.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to adopt this resolution. Any discussion? Mrs. Seaval?
Well, we've got then and now.
Yes, we do have, Mrs. Seaval and Council. These are 3 items which are still pending for payment as well. Core and Main, which is the company that we order all of our pipe for our utility lines, that is ductile iron pipe that we have. So that when you're looking at the price of $155,950, that stuff is a very expensive pipe anyhow. So, but still didn't say that the department did not do things correctly. So that's that's one of the violations. Carpenter Marty and Transportation, that is an engineering consulting with the stormwater out of the engineering department. So we'll charge them with that one. And Licking County, Licking Knox Goodwill, that comes out of the Public Buildings and Lands janitorial contract. Again, not timely made there. And then item 4 is our labor relations contractors that we use for the $8,564.40 coming out of the Safety Service Director's Department as well.
Any other discussion?
Pending for payment.
Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Hillier?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
The resolution is adopted, and that concludes the resolutions. We now move on to ordinances. The first ordinance is for 3rd reading. That's ordinance number 2023-14. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance to create the position of liaison for the Community Advocacy Relations Division of the Mount Vernon Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt ordinance 2023-14.
Second.
Been moved and second for the adoption of this ordinance. Any discussion? Mr. Francis?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief had come over and you wanted to explain.
I just need to clarify something I said earlier. I mentioned earlier that this was a hourly position. This is actually a salaried position. When we did the grant paperwork, they required us to base it on an hourly wage. But when we did the legislation, it is a salaried position based on full-time with that hour. So it basically comes up to $24 an hour, multiplied times the standard of 2,080, you get your 49,920 is the actual salary. So being that this is a salaried position, there would be no overtime involved if they worked more than 40 hours a week. I just wanted to clarify that.
I did have a question for you,
Mr.
and we'd run out
Scott
of
brought that to
time.
my attention that I missed that earlier.
Was that Mr. Hilliard brought up the fact at the last meeting and this one, the overlapping time. And did I hear it right tonight that that's while training's going on?
We're gonna try to limit the amount of overlapping time. There is gonna be some overlap while they're learning the job and learning what we need to do.
Because there'll be a point where this individual will be cut loose.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is because I had great concern with, well, if they're overlapping 2, 3, 4 hours, when I go to work,
Right.
and there's 3 shifts running, if I go in 2 hours early, they're going to send me home because I don't have anything to do.
Correct.
So it's more of they're going to be cut loose to their own shift, and that
Correct.
overlapping time isn't going to exist.
That is the goal of this program, is for this person to be there when Dan is not.
Okay. Anybody else have questions, Mr. Hilliard?
I don't have a question. I asked questions earlier and last week as well, because I've had 3 different people approach me about what exactly the person we have hired does now and how much. That's why I asked the question about feet in the street. And I don't want to be the one to vote something down because of something that, you got grant money. So you have an opportunity with $50,000 here to make an improvement that I want to be the one stepping in the way. But I think, that might be a good thing to track. How much of it's actually on the street, working with the people needing work with, and how much of it's actually rewriting reports, reading reports, answering the telephone, those type of things. Because when we originally talked about this, I thought we'd have a lot more of this person out on porches, doorsteps with the officer, and I'm not sure we're at the percentage we want to be with that. I'm gonna leave that up to you to track.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hill?
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Keener? Mr. Hilliard?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaval?
Yes.
Mr. Severns?
Yes.
Mr. Mahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted. We now move to ordinance for second reading, ordinance number 2023-17. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-17, an ordinance amending the zoning classification of parcel number 66-05329.000 and parcel number 66-02335.000, also known as 301 and 303 North Norton Street, respectively, from the present zoning of R1 Single Family District to PCDD Planned Commercial Development District, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hilliard?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm gonna give this a second reading tonight with a public hearing on June 12th with the third reading. Thank you.
This ordinance receives a second reading. Now move to ordinance number 2023-19. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-19, an ordinance setting hourly compensation for part-time and seasonal personnel in the city of Mount Vernon and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis?
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll give the 2023 ordinance 19 second read, and I did ask for a 10-minute committee meeting.
This ordinance receives a second reading. We now move to the final ordinance, which is for first reading. That's ordinance number 2023-20. Mr. Hill?
Ordinance number 2023-20, an ordinance establishing compensation for the assistant law directors in the office of the law director and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Francis?
We'll give ordinance 2023-20 a first reading, and also I would like a 10-minute committee meeting.
if anyone has any particular questions about that piece of legislation, I'm happy to answer them beforehand, or if you want to give me the questions, I'll be happy to respond to them in the hearing next meeting. Thank you.
This ordinance receives its first reading, and that concludes the legislative portion of the meeting. We now move to remarks from the administration. Mayor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President and Council. Since I sent you an update on Friday, I have nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Zick.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Scott.
Nothing further, Mr. President.
Mr. Stoller.
Real quick, I sent all of you and some of the administration results of income tax collections, and I picked this point because we just filed individually, which was due like the middle of April, so this was a sort of a milestone, if you will. The first chart here goes back to 2018 when the 2% rate started, and it goes forward to 2020, which are actual receipts for the full year. And what I did for 2023 was I took the withholding, which is the yellow, and that's what it's yellow because I refer that to that's your golden goose, your employees that work within the city. I took the amount that was received as of April and multiplied it by 3. So just the assumption is they're going to continue to come in at the same. If everybody stays employed, they're going to come in at the same rate, and at the end of the year, that's about what it'll be. The resident and the business is just what it was when April ended. So what you're going to get with the business, 3 more estimated payments, quarters of estimated payments. What's in there now would have been the first quarter estimated payments and anything that was residual for 2022. So that would have been in the red. So that's probably going to grow. I would expect it to look maybe like 2022. So all this to say, I think this year's going to shape up to be pretty good, and it's going to come out better than any previous year we've had. And then the second slide is just simply the first 4 months through April, what it was last year versus what it is this year, and you can see we're ahead of, when you look at that, so we're ahead of schedule, or we're bringing in more than we did last year. So that's it. Any questions?
We like when that gold money
Yes.
all that money comes in.
Yeah, I do
Keep
too.
moving that gold right up.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Severance.
Yeah, just 2 quick things. First of all, I want to thank the residents from the Vernon View area for coming out. I see we have one here tonight, but thank you for coming to the meeting the other day. I think that was important and necessary. And then, just as Mr. Scott was going through the, basically the donations, I don't know if you realize, but Ariel Foundation has given us $220,000. $50,000 for the water park and $170 for basically trees and beautification. And I mean, we are just flat out blessed to have Ariel Foundation in our community and their generosity. So just a shout out to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things if I could. Council, I'd like to share with you that the developer for 0 Vernon View Drive that had the R3 request voted down by municipal planning sent an email and request to withdraw his application for the zoning amendment. So that won't be coming before council to add your 2 cents worth or be able to vote up or down what municipal planning did. There was conversations I know at the meeting about PND zoning, and with all the work that Mel just said with the neighbors, the signatures, and everything else they did, sat through a 2.5-hour meeting to try to protect what they thought was their neighborhood. I assume the city's talking to this contractor about PND. I heard, so there's no conversation after our city engineer mentioned that would ask him if he thought PND would be good for him.
I
And
don't
said
know
he
what
liked-
the city engineer talked. I know that Mr. Williams came up to us afterwards and said, sorry, it just didn't work. But
Well, Brian did bring up in the meeting that when he asked about PND zoning.
in the meeting, yes, he did make that.
So at this point, there's no conversation with this developer to go any further? I'm just curious as to why, maybe Mr. Vernon, you can answer that, why he would pull the application so council couldn't vote possibly in his favor.
I have no idea. You would have to ask him.
I probably will do that. So we won't be seeing that before council. The other last thing is, I've had several conversations here about First Friday and Dora. Have you been able to follow up with Miss Filkins about Dora, the Adora event, First Fridays?
I'm trying to get a meeting together with her. We went back through, there was nothing in legislation, or we didn't recall any conversations as reviewing some of the meetings about First Fridays being explicitly excluded from the DORA. I also have a conversation started with her because we will have to have some legislation to amend the signage if that's what council chooses to do.
So it was not in the legislation. It was in conversation he had, that Anthony had at the podium, and I think Mel stood behind me on this one before, that he said, Mr. Hillier will preserve your First Fridays. First Fridays will not be part of DORA. Okay? We had, Anthony had came to council about asking to change DORA to not to be event only. And with the discussion we had, it was decided that we'll wait till the new downtown, Miss Filkins was hired and took over. She would come back to council. We would discuss DORA once again. That never happened. Now, I did see a press release today about First Fridays from Experience Mount Vernon, and DORA was not mentioned in that press release at all. The chief, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you, when you talked to me and Jay last week, you had some concerns about this being downtown wide. I think Ms. Filkins should come back to council and have that discussion that we started with Anthony and see exactly where we stand on this. I think, and if I have the time, I'll go back through and find out where Anthony has said that, but I think I have a couple people that stand behind me here that he actually said, Mr. Hillier, I'll preserve your First Fridays. We won't have DORA during those events. But maybe Ms. Filkins would be a good place to start with what they do plan on doing, so at least we're on the same what's going on. And I know the signage was an issue with the temporary signage for events, because Anthony thought it took too much time for him. But I think we need to review all that. Thank you.
Mrs. Woods,
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mrs. Sabo,
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mr. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to welcome to Mount Vernon the new patrol officer, Andreas Cotter. Goes by Andy. Chief says that he swore in today and he'll be able to start tomorrow because he's already APATA certified, and so that's great news. We appreciate council's support on the new officers we'll be hiring this summer, and also the liaison today. Again, getting those patrol officers that discretionary patrol time, the good coverage, cutting down on some overtime, et cetera. So appreciate support. Chief, thanks for getting those digital speed signs up. I think Officer Trowbridge did that. Some of us need more reminder than others to watch their speed on certain streets. And I'll just leave that alone after that comment. Appreciate the signs on Main Street honoring the city employees. Those look great. Whose idea was that, and how'd that happen?
That was the Employee Relations Committee.
Okay, very good.
Nice.
That's those look great, and it's great to have those honor our employees that way. Finally, congratulations to the graduates, Mount Vernon Nazarene University, the high schools and other colleges. The good work, and it's always bittersweet for us to see the students come to Knox County. They become part of our lives, and then they leave us and go off to do other things, and that's good and proper, and the right rhythm, but we're sorry to see them go as well. So congratulations to all the graduates of the local schools, and thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Francis?
Thank you, Mr. President. Be real brief. Between Chester Street and Marion Street on Washington, looks like they uncovered a manhole cover, and man, is it a hole when they uncovered it, because it's like 4 or 5 inches deep. So it's been there for 4 or 5 days. So just be nice to see when they're going to cap it up, and because boy, when you miss it or you hit it, you say, man, that's a hole. So thank you, Rick. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thanks the media for being here this evening, and thanks for the participation. Thanks, and hopefully people are able to see this on YouTube and be able to watch our meetings. Appreciate the participation from the community. That being said, I call for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
We move to second. We adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
I'll be a bed
We are
at 9
adjourned.
o'clock.